Dude, Fudge called me a rat after I predicted them to lose as I was leaving the studio. And I was like, do you not know that it's the opposite? And he's like, oh. Hello and welcome to The Dive. We've got the Diveys episode this week. Woohoo!
Cheers,
Clink.
Mark.
We also have the...
Cheers, Kobe.
Clink, Kobe.
No cheers?
Got it there. We also have to talk about all the playoff series that happened. There's an upset or two. And then most importantly, there's some huge news this week. We have to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 came out. And it's taken over my life.
Yeah. My life is absolutely falling apart. My wife is going to leave.
I have slept like 5 hours every night now. I don't sleep anymore. I just can't stop playing. But yeah, unironically.
There's something insanely satisfying about the dice roll. I don't know
Dude,
if it's
that
just
animation
me.
with like the ding, ding, whatever that is, I feel that too.
Yeah, it's literally the same as if there was just a behind the scenes calculation. It just told me if I failed or not. But the dice is insanely satisfying.
It feels like tabletop dice. Like,
Yeah.
I always like that feeling, and then they somehow got that.
When it's like you need a 5 to succeed and you get like a 23 or whatever
You're
with
like,
your
yes!
bonuses.
Critical success. Yeah. I really like that game. I also like Larian and the story and all that stuff around the game. So
Who cares about that? It's
me,
about the
I
dice.
get secondhand pride. So like I'm not proud of my own stuff, but like
Yeah.
when someone else that I like is getting all the attention I think they deserve, I'm like,
Yeah, I was just kidding. I mean,
yeah.
I'm actually really happy for the selfish perspective of so many people are playing this game that hopefully more people will make really good, no microtransaction RPGs, right? Because I love RPGs. I love this shit. I love MMORPGs. I love single player RPGs. I love multiplayer RPGs. I just love that style of game. So for me, it's actually just really exciting from that perspective that it's doing so well because it just proves again that you can make an incredible standalone game without any microtransactions, no battle passes, no DLC, no extra crap, and people will play the shit out of it.
especially in the light of a lot of developers who used to make games like this saying, oh, you can't make games like this anymore, whether that's kind of CD Projekt Red, Final Fantasy 16 said it, BioWare, like a lot of companies have moved away from this kind of game. They're like, no, you can still do it. Anyways, won't tangent too much more on that, otherwise I won't shut up. Let's talk about the important actual news from this week. What was
Like Kobe.
like Kobe.
Kobe's not here.
Yeah, so it's just Azael and I two-manning this right now. I guess on to the actual news.
Yeah.
Faker's back, which is good to see. They won a couple of their series now that he has returned, which led to a very funny interaction online that you pointed out.
Yeah, Ashley Kang tweeted out basically asking, who's the greatest support ever? And it was really, really funny, some of the responses that came through. So it's discussion, who's the greatest support ever? People are talking about, okay, Mata, Wolf, Beryl, whatever, various different players and stuff. And one of the responses from Zven, which is basically, what about me? Did you forget about putting, grand champion Zven up there? And she responds with the clip where I guess this was at Worlds last year, I think.
Yeah, a year or two ago. I can't remember, but
A
one
year
of
or
the times.
two ago, where Zven just caught the most random stray in an interview where Carrie got asked about some of the different teams, and he basically just says, out of the blue, I don't care about C9 because they have Zven, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about playing them because that guy's butt. And so EMENES just responds with, frauds without Faker, because T1 was doing really bad without Faker, right? So the T1 fraud watch is over. Faker
He
is
comes
back.
back. They start winning again.
They're
It's like,
winning their
geez, I
series.
wonder who makes all the decisions for that team.
Yeah, it's definitely funny, but obviously the T1 players are incredible individually, but it is crazy and did again reaffirm how important he is to their team.
Yeah.
So it's fun that he came back, but that was a really funny tweet, and MS with a bit of a banger.
Yeah, EMENES popped off on Twitter. He's been doing really funny stuff for a little bit now. Other big news from just not specifically LCS stuff. Project L released a new character. It was playable at EVO. Neither of us are big fighting game people, so I don't have much to say about it. If you like fighting games and you're watching this and didn't know, here's your heads up. I watched a lot of Leffen videos and Maximilian Dude videos to get fighting games people's perspective on it because I don't have any thoughts, and half the things they're saying I don't understand. They're like, oh, you got a DHC mix up into cross down counter with Super 2, and you're like, Sure, man. Yeah, that sounds cool. Are you excited? I sound excited. Great. So
Yeah.
it seems cool.
Our producer is unhappy with us not knowing, by the way. He's writing
raging.
angry words that keep getting bigger in the chat.
I played a lot of Melee, but that doesn't cross over very well to other games.
I mean, one thing that I will say is I'm excited because I think one of the things that they are going to try to do, and one of the things I think they successfully did with Valorant and tac shooters, is that they made it feel more approachable. So a lot of people that I know that never really played Counter-Strike, I had played a ton of Counter-Strike growing up. A lot of people were interested in trying Valorant, right? Because it felt more approachable and it was IP that, maybe appealed to them and things like this. And I think that, especially with a lot of it being built around, the 2v2 mode and tag team and this type of stuff where you can play with a friend, I feel like that feels less intimidating. So I didn't grow up playing fighting games. I didn't even grow up playing Smash. So for me, it's always felt intimidating trying to get into this because I'm a very competitive person. I don't want to be bad at a game, but also don't really have the interest to spend a massive amount of time and get good at the game either. So people are like, want to play Smash? And I'm like, okay. And they played for 15 years and I don't know the buttons. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, this isn't fun. So, maybe I'm definitely going to try it out. We'll see if I actually get hooked on it or not, but I'm excited to try it out. And I think a lot of people are kind of feeling similarly to me who aren't hardcore in fighting games, that this will be something that the IP appeals to them and they'll at least give it a shot.
I know nothing. It sounds like from talking to some people, it's like somewhat low entry to barrier to entry because it is, I think it sounds like mostly about your normal buttons and special buttons and like an angle that you press kind of.
Okay. Not crazy combos or something.
There's a lot of combos. So that's the thing is there's a lot of like choices in the game and options and ways to do things. But like if you just want to go out there and button mash, like you're going to do some cool abilities, I think.
One thing that was an interesting take, and this is the last thing I'll say, was one of my friends who's, I would say, almost pro level at fighting games, used to play and compete and stuff. He was saying that he thinks one of the things that could be hard about it is that almost guaranteed in the 2v2 mode, because you can play as a 1 or a 2 in tag team, he said it's almost always going to be better to play solo than duo because you know exactly when you want to pass off and when you want to tag in and do those things. So he had some concerns that would maybe like hurt the mode because if you don't want to play as like with a friend because that's supposed to be a competitive disadvantage or whatever. But I'm also like, that probably won't affect me because I'm going to be way too butt at this game.
Well, it's one of those concerns where it's like the competitive scene is just going to do what's best for the competitive scene, which will be 1v1. Maybe they'll do 2v2, but I doubt it. But
people do parrot what the top scene does, I will say a lot.
Yeah, but so most people be playing 1v1 or 2v2, but people at home don't care about, like, if you're just playing with someone on the couch who just showed up to hang out for 15 minutes, like they're not going to care either. So I feel like it's relatively safe, but who knows? Neither of us are fighting game people, so we should return to our area of expertise.
Until now.
And into the future, into the foreseeable future for me at least. So 2 big series happened this week, or 2 big teams left after the result of the lower bracket series. There were the upper ones as well, but TSM and 100 Thieves both out of playoffs now. I guess start with TSM because it's also maybe the bigger news. Both had like kind of historic weight behind them. TSM obviously is potentially the last time we see them.
TSM is for sure way bigger news because we're expecting. I mean, they announced that this is going to be the last split, right? And
they announced it. It's not official in the sense that I know of, at least, that it's like
Riot hasn't announced it.
Yeah, I don't think.
But TSM announced it, so that's like what I'm working under, right?
Yeah, we're all working on the idea that this is the last time we've seen them in the LCS. Could be wrong, but yeah. I
mean, if it doesn't happen, then whatever. But we're basing it off of TSM's announcement. So for me, that is by far the bigger news. Less because of the upset. I mean, the upset I think was surprising to me. I thought TSM was definitely going to win that series against Dig.
Yep.
I don't think that they had their best games. So I think from that side it was a little bit surprising, but I do think it's really big news just because so many of like my favorite memories are associated with TSM. When I think about this league and how successful they were for so many years, right? It was 10 or 12 straight finals appearances that they made. Especially in years past, there was so many memories that I have that were associated with them, like some of my favorite esports memories. And I thought that the video that they did, kind of the TSM send-off video that played after they got eliminated, I thought was really, really cool, showing back all these early days. And it was so interesting seeing, these clips of Zven winning on TSM as he's coaching against them to eliminate them for the last time, from the LCS. And obviously Turtle winning in the early days and playing again here in the final game, I think was really cool. Haunter as well kind of has that story. So it's definitely something where I'm gonna miss a lot of the players. I'm gonna miss some of those kind of memories and associations that I have with them, because there was definitely a lot of really cool moments that TSM has been a part of, right? And they have kind of like an undeniable history in this league.
One of the calls in there was Freak talking about, as they were like winning the championship, it's like the best team North America's ever seen, 6 titles in 5 years, 10 straight, whatever it was, but it's like it listed everything very clearly. During that time period, it was uncontested how good they were.
Yeah.
I think we'll save like a proper send-off eulogy dive conversation for when it ever becomes official.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can do favorite TSM memories and more
like all that kind of stuff.
In the future for sure, once it's a done deal or whatever. But definitely that felt impactful to me, seeing that this isn't probably the last time I'll ever watch TSM in the LCS.
Yeah, sucks that it was 2 best of 5s. That like for this group of guys in particular, they had 2 best of 5s that they went full 5 games and just couldn't clutch it out in the 5th game. So unfortunate for Insanity and those kinds of. Especially for him, I feel like stepping in and like I feel like elevating this team beyond what people were expecting. They do end up in 7th, 8th place technically, tied for that. So, they definitely overperformed what people were expecting in the regular season. But like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and finishing 6th was pretty good.
Yep.
7th, 8th now after losing 2 best of 5s, a little bit like, damn, like you didn't quite clutch it out in playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of sour note I think that it feels like it ends on a bit, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, TSM fans were on me all split for predicting them 10th, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they finished 7th, 8th, so I wasn't getting any tweets after those series. But they did have, I think, a really impressive regular season, especially for expectation, and especially when you take into consideration the fact that 3 of their losses were with Ruby, not with this squad. So it's definitely a disappointing note. I think, I expected that they could have accomplished more in playoffs, but that's sometimes, what happens in playoffs when teams are preparing specifically for you. It can be a little bit tough, but I also think, there was a lot of kind of close moments where it could have maybe gone the other way.
Yeah, they easily could have ended up winning either of those series if something was slightly different in Game 5s. The other team that lost, 100 Thieves.
Not a shocker to me.
Not a shocker. Disappointing all the same. Technically historic again because 100 Thieves have gone to the last 2 Worlds. Doublelift was Summerlift. Hadn't lost he won every title in summer that he had competed in since 2015.
Yeah.
He didn't do 2021 or
he took 2 years off.
2021 and 2022 he wasn't in the league for, but he won everything else. So didn't happen this time around. Summerlift didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen, but I will say Doublelift was one of the only good things happening for 400 Thieves, I felt like, in their series. His Varus game in game number 1 was, I thought, really good, and it lost. His Kaisa game, obviously he got a lot of kills early. He had like 3 kills at 4 minutes or something like that. That was the only game they actually won in the series, and I thought he had a really good game in that. As Mark's face, as he pours champagne into the cup, he was just drinking coffee.
Well, you told me to do the coffee first as a meme.
The coffee was really funny, to be honest.
It was your meme, and then I did it, but it's a golden latte with like spice.
Guess what?
Kobe's gonna show up. He's coming anyway. Look at the color difference between our 2 champagnes. This might not read on camera, but like mine is clearly murky.
I will say, Mark,
there's sediment in it from it's a golden latte, so it's spiced, and so you see these like floating pepper flakes in there. Little pepper.
Kobe's gonna get here right about the same time the dad gets back with his cigarettes, so so I think you can drink his.
Yeah, well, you never know. Keep the glass of milk out when it comes back.
Yeah, so 100 Thieves, like 100 Thieves.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with this team. It's clearly an underperformance for this group of guys. Even if like Closer's not playing his best, and Summit's not playing his best, and Doublelift's fresh off of a 2-year hiatus.
I thought Doublelift was good though.
Doublelift was good. This team clearly should not be the 8th place team in the league for whatever reason. They were dysfunctional. Closer had his worst split ever.
Yeah.
Quid was I don't know I don't know what his future is in the league, but as soon as that pickup was announced, I was skeptical of it. That was one of the big reasons I put them pretty low for me, and it ended up worse than I thought. I put them, I think, 7th. They were 8th.
Yeah. I had them 5th, so I was definitely more positive on it than you were. But for me, the biggest surprise was Closer. Closer had a horrible
Yeah,
split.
I didn't think it'd be that bad.
I think Closer was 9th or 10th best jungler in the league, right? He was really bad. I think it's him or Kenvi for worst jungler in the league, this split, unfortunately. And I think Quid really did not have a lot of good games. I think somebody was fine. I think Busio was kind of fine. I think Doublelift was pretty good. And at the end of the day, it's definitely a really disappointing split for them. I think the community is probably really negative on Quid. He's very young and he hasn't even played pro before, so I feel like he deserves more of a chance. But there's some stuff that I think just felt weird, almost like his obsession with defensive items felt kind of weird. And I know he didn't actually build Crown every game on his Zir. He definitely didn't, because I went back and looked, and he had some Leandry's games and whatnot where he built other things. And I know that Crown does have some really legit stuff with it. Crown is not always bad. I think Crown into another defensive item is always bad pretty much, but Crown into offensive items can be totally fine. And Crown does allow you to do some things. Like Crown allows you to side lane, better in some of these 1v1s. You can't just get jumped on by Tristana and solo
makes
it
your
out.
shuffle safer at the start of a fight.
Makes your shuffle safer when you're playing against hard engaged teams. You can survive. So I think that some of the Crown Flame, I mean, we were talking about it a lot in that series just because Jat was memeing about it a lot, and he was just kind of doing his kind of joking about it. I don't actually think Crown is that bad, but I will say his Tristana game where they're playing two threat, if I recall, and he went third item GA.
I think they technically had a Viego as well, but it was not a fed Viego.
That one was like, to me, that GA third was so reportable. That was crazy.
Yeah.
You are already losing, you're already behind, and it was just I don't think I've ever seen that.
Just GA third on Tristana.
That was so weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just like brain on autopilot. Let's soft in. Let's get out of here. No, I don't think it was a soft in. I think he did definitely have all year long.
Like a mindset thing almost, though.
But it's only around minimization, because he went for a lot of aggressive plays in team fights generally. He wasn't like this.
His first Azir game was good in that series too.
Yeah, like I don't think it's like a black eye on his whole play style, because there's definitely like players who you see who are just afraid to like get involved DPS wise, and you just watch them like sidestep in the back line of a fight. That's not Quid, but his items seem weird for sure. I also think for him, it's not a shot on him, but just someone who had never, like you said, played in a major league yet. He had been in the Academy League of Korea, really young. I think he's 17, 18.
He's very young.
Either way, super young, flies to a new country, doesn't have a ton of competitive experience. Even within Academy, if you ask the people who cast that league and watch it, they're like, he's not like some stud, like popping off every single game. And
he was like middle of the pack.
He's not future of the LCK. So it was always a weird pickup to me for that reason, because there's even if he was good, there's these other hurdles around levels he's played at, first time in America, young kid, like all these things are just
barrier, culture change.
A team that's struggling a little bit in spring, like it wasn't like he was stepping into this like insane roster.
Arrived late as well, I believe.
Arrived late. There's like such a stacked hand against you that it's like you had to be insane to actually perform there. So I don't hold it against Quid. It's more about the decision to go for him that I think was questionable, because you're like, well, you could have just had Insanity. Like you wonder what this team looks like then, and how much Insanity helped Bugi, what he could have done for close, or just something like that. That's where I'm left thinking, like, I don't know, guys, you could have just had a much easier option here.
Yeah, it's always tough. I feel really bad for players when their first split does have these other circumstances around it, and I don't think he played a great split and was just screwed by the situation, but he didn't play well. But there are other things around it, and he is such a young player. It would be sad if it's just like, nope, no one's ever giving you a chance again now, right? But that can sometimes feel like what happens a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know I saw a lot of tweets and whatnot, people kind of speculating, okay, what does 100 Thieves do? How much do they change? And definitely I think there's expectation that 100 Thieves will change a lot. Coming out of this split, because it went so bad. They didn't even make it to playoffs they made it 8th place and they didn't make it past the first round in playoffs, right? So I think it's definitely really disappointing for the roster that they had. But I will say I was happy to hear Doublelift in his interview say that he wanted to come back. He didn't come back just to have one bad year and then give up.
Yeah,
and it does feel like the kind of competitive fire has been lit for him. And I think he had a really good split. I think if he was on a better team, he would be getting a lot more notice, because I felt like individually he was actually looking quite good. And AD is one of the roles that I think is most team dependent to really shine. And the team was not playing well.
No, you did not have much play around him, despite having good laning phases in front to back team fights late game, not great engages.
Their shot calling was horrible.
Yeah, their macro was not great. Some of that might be him, because he was going pretty hard on himself in the interviews, where he was saying he let himself down a little bit and felt like as a veteran he should have been able to provide clear answers to the team. And I think the game changes rapidly, despite the fact that it is still League of Legends. Every year there's big patch changes, and like, what do you do and how do you jungle now, and like what's the meta. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I think I hope he sounds like he's coming back. I think 100 Thieves can keep him and build around him in the future. He's played well enough that hopefully he can attract some other talent.
Yeah.
And the org for 100 Thieves is still one of the most popular orgs in the league. So I think, it's a bummer year, but it's not a concern in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it is a good point. It's a fair point that at the end of the day, he has to accept some responsibility too. And obviously he was, because, in their playoff series, it was just like some of those games, man, even when they're in good positions, where they just seem to have no idea how to win. They just go to Baron.
5-man bot dive too, where they just like overcommit.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, where clearly they just didn't know what to do if the team wouldn't come to them in 5v5 and lose, right? And that's the only way they were going to win, basically.
Yeah.
But in other news, hooray for NRG. They made it to Worlds.
Talk. We're done.
Yeah, they made it to Worlds. I think really, really cool story. We'll obviously touch on them more, but congratulations to them making it to Worlds. Obviously really sad for Golden Guardians, but first time NRG as an org obviously has gone. CLG has gone to Worlds in the past. But so many of these guys, even the guys who have gone, it's been so long since they have been there. Contracts at 2017. Ignar was last time he was there, maybe with Misfits or something. That's
FlyQuest.
Okay, so
it was 2020, I think.
So more recently, and then the other three had never been there.
Yeah,
right.
Did Ignar go with EG? No, EG didn't make it when he was with the EG and contracts back then too.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to get excited for this team, given that there also are a lot of North American. There's so many storylines for this team that make them easy to root for.
FBI has been there as well. Of course.
FBI was the most recent. He was there last year with 100 Thieves. He's actually gone 3 years in a row now. So a little head tap to FBI, who gets a little slept on, even by me. But I think for the top side of the map, those core had been the ones through CLG back in 2022 spring. They brought in Dokla in summer, and then they've been together now for 3 splits. And they won a huge playoff series. This is what you and I were arguing about last time. Is exactly how
I was right. It's cool. I knew it was going to happen.
No, you still predicted Golden Guardians.
You don't
get.
Fine. I just said it was the hardest to predict.
I said it wasn't going to happen, and then we were arguing about it. But
cool.
You said they weren't going to.
It's cool. I'm used to being right. It's fine. You don't have to give me credit. It happens all the time.
I think the fact that the 3 top side had all debuted in the LCS, struggled at some point, got booted back down to tier 2 and played in that for 2 to 3 years and fought their way back. And then their resurgence into the LCS was not exactly easy. It wasn't like they came back in and just dominated again. It's they then had to fight for now 4 splits in a row, basically 3 depending on who you're talking about, to get to this level. So they're a very easy team to root for. Palafox and Dokla had never been. For contracts, like you said, it's 6 years. It's insane. And this team actually has really great personalities. I just don't think, because they hadn't had huge wins, and a lot of your popularity has to do with how much you're winning. Yeah, I think there's a video that came out. It's NRG reacting to their best and worst plays. I don't know if you watched it.
I did. It was really good.
It's really funny. And the dive usually gets 40 to 50K views on YouTube. This video's at 7 right now. Everyone should watch it. I want to see this spike after the dive drops. At least
100%.
At least another 10K.
We're never putting out another episode of the dive
right now. We're not talking again until you watch it.
Just in here like this. We'll be waiting.
Yeah, just to see how funny they all are, because they are just arguing and talking shit at each other and breaking down. They remember every single play so clearly, and they all just groan or oh, watch me in this fight. I'd lose my mind here or something. It's a great video, and it's well edited, and it just gets to show that this is a team that has really funny personalities, but I just don't think a lot of people watched the content before that showed it off. So easy team to root for going forward.
Plus, I just think, to me, it was just special seeing their reaction.
Yeah.
And I think even for Zven, he was kind of talking about it, how you can kind of take it for granted a little bit, because he's so used to qualifying for Worlds and having this happen that it becomes just an expectation. And so I think even for him, it was kind of cool seeing how much it meant to them, right? Because Palafox has never been there. Dokla has never been there. Contracts hasn't been there in forever. FBI has been there more recently. But these are guys that it means so much to. And, seeing them kind of just overwhelmed with emotion and joy was really, really cool. And also, I think if they were going to do it, this wouldn't be the split that you would have predicted them to do it, right? I don't think this was the split that people were expecting, that huge pop-off from them as much. I do think that, like I was talking about on a serious note last week, this is a team that at their best could play against the best teams and take them down, right? And they showed that during the regular season, and now they proved that during playoffs. So now you kind of have to give them that respect that maybe they really can get it done.
Yeah, I think just the all-pro voting, how we had that graphic that showed all first and second team for Golden Guardians nothing for them. And it's just like,
And I saw some takes, which was kind of funny, where people were like, see, this proves that all-pro voting is fraudulent. And I'm like, well, they also did chain lose to all the worst teams in the league in the regular season.
There's the right side of that other graphic we showed where they were 3-7 versus bottom teams.
Exactly, right? So I thought Pal Fox should have made all-pro.
Yeah.
I think that largely the rest of them shouldn't. I think that was totally legit. And Pal Fox was borderline, obviously. A lot of people didn't agree with me that he should have made it. I think you voted for him too, maybe.
I think I did Insanity.
Okay.
But yeah, whatever.
But he was definitely borderline. So I don't think that this disproves all-pro, because people always kind of get in that mode where it's like, okay, all-pro is regular season, guys. Right?
Every postseason, that MVP was fraudulent.
Yeah.
That all-pro vote was fraudulent.
Yeah.
This guy's better than that guy. River's really better than Contracts. And it's like, guys, River had a way better split than Contracts, but Contracts gapped the shit out of him in this series.
Yeah, I also started seeing some of that talk after the EGC9 series.
Yeah.
People saying Berserker should obviously win MVP. Jojo better not win it, and Blabber better not win it. Berserker's clearly the best player and stuff. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's take a deep breath here. But should we move on to the match previews?
Yeah, because we'll break down NRG's win and stuff as we move forward. We'll have the diveys after the match previews, kind of to end the episode. First one going down into the losers bracket, maybe the most hype matchup of the weekend in some sense, because it is surprising that the teams in the losers bracket, EG, TL, and GG, only one of them will make Worlds outright, and the other one will have to fight Europe.
In the dumpster match.
Is that what we're calling it?
We're calling it the dumpster match.
They're like, you come out of the alleyway.
The back alley.
Yeah, the back alley knife fight, and one person comes back to the Club of Worlds.
Yeah.
I think it's just crazy to see that, like, based off how the regular season ended, these are 3 of our top 4 teams now in losers bracket, and only one of them gets a straight shot into Worlds. So EG versus TL up first. Crazy match.
Yeah, it is really shocking that what the lower bracket is looking like, for sure, especially Golden Guardians, who were a tiebreaker away from being first place, right? We'll talk about that more later, but yeah. EG versus TL, I think it is going to be a really interesting one. TL obviously coming off of their loss against NRG, right? That was just a really kind of crazy back and forth series. TL, I think in general, just has such clear weaknesses and such clear strengths that I think they're a fun team to watch. Their games can be very sloppy, very chaotic. I do think for EG losing to C9 doesn't feel like a condemnation of them to me, because I already felt like C9 was clearly the best team, and also the way in which they lost those games.
They had like hope in them.
This was like a 3-0 series for C9 that could have been 2-1 EG.
At that point, yeah,
it could have been 2-1 in those first 2 games, especially game number 1. Game number 3, I think, was the other kind of arguable one where EG was in a pretty good spot.
They had a Baron and they threw in a top jungle fight.
Yeah.
And then game 1, they had gotten 2 Barons and they had broken the base.
And they were winning every fight.
And it was like an inhibitor fight randomly where C9 kind of finally cracked them.
Yeah, and then just won the game off of it. So EG, I think, definitely showed some strengths. But I will say, as much talk as there was, I know Revenge obviously had his Player of the Week thing. And there was a lot of discussion about, in his post-game interview and whatnot, and just kind of talk around, okay, can we disprove the narrative here that everyone just goes mid towards Jojo, and if you stop Jojo, you stop EG? Well, they didn't really disprove anything, because C9 was definitely doing that.
EMENES, clapped up Jojo in the first 2 games with the help of the team, but
with the help of the whole squad.
The help of the squad. But I think individually, I was worried that Jojo was going to have a better series than EMENES, but I only think that was true in the 3rd game, and EMENES actually did outperform him in the first 2.
His Jace games, I don't think were great, but I will also say, was it game 1 or game 2?
Game 1 was LeBlanc, game 2 was Gragas for EMENES.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember which game it was. I think it was the Gragas game. It would have been the Gragas game where. So Blabber comes mid immediately, flashes on Jojo, then Fudge comes down from top lane and flashes on Jojo, and EMENES had flashed on Jojo, and Zven also came mid, by the way, and also flashed. He flashed kind of needlessly. It was like trying to kill Armeo, but then Armeo backstepped and whatever. But it was like 4 C9 members have been mid in the first 4 minutes and all spent their flash, right? So clearly there was a lot of attention through mid, and EG wasn't really able to punish that by doing things elsewhere. the game plan is not going to change for anyone. Everyone is going to be saying it's Jojo versus the world, and until EG can actually disprove that in a meaningful way, right? You know, Revenge had a really great series the previous week, and you know did have a great series. One player of the series, one player of the week, I think deserved that. But Jojo was also amazing in that series, right?
Yeah.
And I think Jojo arguably could have even won it as well. So I do think that until EG wins, when Jojo actually doesn't have a good series or is like really held down and other people are dominating, no one's going to change the game plan. The game plan is going to be the exact same thing here. Send everything at Jojo, pick matchups that are going to shut him down, pick jungle 2v2 that is going to make it difficult for him, and that's what TL are going to look for.
Yeah, I think the narrative at the start of the split was Jojo's the only good player on this team, and he's dragging 4 bodies across the line.
It's definitely not that now.
And that's not true anymore. I think the goalposts have moved on the argument that I think Revenge took the most umbrage with, which is that, you know, it's 4 wars plus Jojo. Yeah, definitely not that. I think they proved that wrong. Unforgiving and step up. ALS made good plays. Obviously, Revenge is the number 2 playmaker on that team, I think, just in terms of carry threat in the early game. But it's still true that if Jojo doesn't play well, the team will not win. That's kind of where the argument has moved to me. And so if you shut Jojo down, your chances of winning skyrocket. So do that every game. Try your best to shut Jojo down, because shutting Unforgiven down will not win you the game at the same. And maybe you can blow any lane open technically enough to insta win the game. Yeah. Like we've seen happen when C9 played EG in the regular season. They just killed them level 2 and then level 3 and then level 4. And it's like, okay, yeah. And any snowball like that can happen. But outside that, in terms of actual game plan, go mid.
Yeah.
And I think trouble for TL, APA is the mid laner.
Yeah.
And they kind of, well, hold on. Hold on. Not just, that sounded worse than I meant it to. That sounded way worse than I meant it to. I'm sorry to APA.
Really problematic here for TL.
My point with it
Your
was.
mid laner is APA.
My point was.
Mark Zimmerman, 2023.
My point was going to be that AP is at his best when he's on like scaling farming lanes, and it's not about shutting his opponent down. Ziggs, Cassio, these kinds of things where, you know, he can play playmakers with Nico and stuff, but even then it's more like, I want to playmake around my team. I don't want you to come to me. And that's more where I was going with it. I do think, to be fair, there's also a skill gap between him and Jojo.
Massive.
So individually it's worrying, but even playstyle wise is where my head was at, was like, this is not a team that wants to go mid relentlessly and make plays around him. So it's a double problem, I guess you could say. The other thing for Team Liquid, I thought their mid game was still really bad versus 100 Thieves.
It was.
I saw a lot of people saying, well, it looks so much better. I'm like, no, 100 Thieves just doesn't do anything. But even then, I don't think TL made many good proactive plays. The one that like lives in my head is like the 100 Thieves 5-man dive bottom that gets turned 1-for-0 by TL. Summit reset late to try and cover the play, and he's never going to make it bot lane in time. And then that gives Someday the free TP instead of Summit just staying top and perma pushing to punish that way through just farming, which is weird because he's usually a pretty selfish player in some sense, and this was the time he was trying to be selfless and he got punished. But then he stayed bot lane after running down there for like 45 seconds, so the top lane's totally empty, and after that horrible play, 100 Thieves just reset, go top, and take a full top turret after making a horrible overcommitment of resources that got turned, and they still somehow end up with tempo. And I'm like, what the like, what is this? Is some of the worst. And they had bad lane assignments, they're running around the map really weirdly, and it's stuff like that like, it makes it really hard to win because you're just not in map states to make the right play. And so it's concerning against EG, who I don't think EG's macro is like insane or anything like that, but it just makes it so hard to win. Plus their team fighting is inconsistent. So I'm a little pessimistic still on TL.
I mean, it's a very different matchup than the one they just played, right? Because I felt similarly to you, where I think I was casting that series, but I didn't want to be too much of a negative Nancy about it.
Yeah,
right?
On cast, it's not quite the right place to.
Yeah, but I do think it's hard to say that when TL is playing against 100 Thieves, they fix their problems, because it's a team that doesn't really pressure you at all. 100 Thieves, more than anything, is kind of like a do nothing and lose team, right?
We're scaling.
And they're going to pick, they're basically going to pick for 5v5, and they're going to hope Doublelift carries them. It's kind of how it looked like most of the 100 Thieves games went. They never really are super proactive. They don't really push the pace. EG will fight you, and EG will, really go at you, and I think challenge you in a way that 100 Thieves won't. So I do think that this level of opponent is much higher. I do think it's a big concern, just the mid lane matchup in general, because APA has also looked very nervous in playoffs, I think, and has had really big reactions when plays are going wrong. I think he did have a better series here for sure than his first series, where he looked really down on himself after and in between games and in the player cams and whatnot. So this is a bit of a confidence builder for them, and maybe they can really kind of improve on that. But I think if they maintain the similar level coming in, it's going to be tough because Jojo is going to go at you the whole time. And he's a player that is going to force mistakes from you. He's going to make you trade. He's going to make you take these fights constantly, and you have kind of got to be perfect with it to not get run over. And I think that's going to be a huge challenge for APA. I will say, though, I am kind of curious, like, what is EG going to do as far as the jungle situation goes? Because they tried Shaden in Game 3 when they were down 0-2, but Armeo also played, like, Game 1 was going really well on the Ivern. I thought the Ivern was a great pick in the Game 1.
He was playing it well.
And actually I thought it was a really big part of them being in such a good spot. Shaden came in and did fine. I'm kind of like, I just feel like it's weird when you have these situations where you're doing these player swaps back and forth. I don't really feel as though it does the team much good.
Yeah. It felt like once they put Shaden in, they should have just kept Shaden in at the end of the regular season. And it strategically, there's not huge differences. It's like, okay, you know, you have Armeo with the Ivern, I guess, and he played it well, but I don't know how much it really changes how the entire team plays. I've heard that Armeo was doing better in scrims because they were splitting time before, and then I think it was fully Armeo, and then when Shaden came back in, they've gone back to splitting time, and I think maybe scrims are going better with Armeo, so the team goes back to him or something. I'm not quite sure the exact timeline of things, but it's a semi-consistent thing with Armeo where people feel like he doesn't play as well on stage as he does in scrims, because this happened with TSM back when he debuted. And I don't think it was good for him that they swapped him out, and it's kind of happening again now. Or like, I just don't, to your point, think it's beneficial for him to not just hand him the keys and be like, well, we ride or die with you. Like, it's not ideal, but you know, I don't think swapping is helping that much. I think he had a great Game 1. It looked better than some of the last times we had seen him, but it doesn't feel like it's not like he's the make or break reason the team wins or loses. It feels like, so it is a little weird. I think versus Pyosik, Pyosik's relatively, I think, proactive in the early game and will, make things happen. I think the top lane matchup is a close and interesting one. We've seen a lot of what's going on with Renekton, who's doing what into Renekton, are we leaving Rumble up? There's a lot of interesting meta best of 5 things going on with top lane, whereas bot lane feels pretty boring. Yeah. So
it's basically just Kai'Sa versus Vic every single game, and then people play Xayah or whatever if that's not banned.
Yeah, Xayah, Ezreal, and pick whatever melee support counter matchup you want. If they pick Rel, you go Alistar. Some random stuff. They go Rakan, you go, whatever.
It's basically just engaged champs in support, and we're not really seeing any enchanters, really. I mean, we see some Nautilus, we saw a little bit of M.U.S.K support, we see lots of Rel, we see lots of Rakan. Jungle, I would say, is somewhat similar as well. I guess there were some physical damage junglers that were getting rotated in, but kind of only after bans and stuff, only after there's more bans. It seems like it's mostly just focused on Sejuani and a lot of tank junglers.
Yeah, I think the flex picks, a lot of them do stem from jungle, like Poppy is going top or jungle. I guess M.U.S.K is a flex now too. Rel is a flex. And so there's some interesting stuff, and then you end up like, ooh, it's the Viego splash, and someone tried a Lilia. And so like I do think there's some interesting stuff going on there. Bot lane's like, ooh, Braum. Yeah. So I'm pretty checked out on bot lane meta, but I do think it's good for TL in that sense. The core on Engager is great.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you feeling about this series as far as predictions go?
I think unless mid lane somehow goes much better for TL than I'm expecting, I think it's probably EG 3-1 or 3-2. I think I don't think they're so much better than TL that it's an easy series, and it could go the other way. But oh boy, I think they could stomp, to be fair, for TL2. Like, Pyosik's playing well, Core's running all over the map, their early game's crazy, and maybe they just they just literally camp Jojo. Summit roams more than he usually does, and they do it. Maybe they can. I don't think they can't, but
yeah, I think I just don't see them being able to shut down Jojo. And generally, if Jojo's playing well, EG wins, right? And that's kind of just been the recipe for EG. It feels like this whole split. So that is kind of my biggest concern. Is I just think it's a big mismatch in mid. And while there is obviously foreseeably some way that they could win, you're talking about like, Summit roaming, or maybe just they blast through bot and they blast through top. So maybe Pyosik is really active and they're able to get big leads, but TL has shown so many times that they're not consistent in the mid game that it's hard for me to care that much about their leads, right? So that is kind of the problem, is they just keep showing me that their leads don't mean that much. And so I have trouble kind of buying into that and caring about their early game as much as I would with some of the other teams, I think. And I also don't think that it doesn't feel like this team would full send it on playing only through APA as their winning strategy on your brand new guy on a team with Summit and Core, and
And that's when you bring Harry back in for the early game play.
There you go. I mean, maybe if things go bad, I wouldn't be shocked, right?
He wasn't there in the practice room at the start of the series 2 weeks ago, but the series this week, Harry was there. So maybe he's there just to help coach and like give an opinion for APA on how he should be dealing with stuff in playoffs, or maybe he's there as a potential sub. It is a back pocket card you could play.
I mean, I would think that it would be the similar situation with EG's jungle.
Yeah.
If they go down 0-2 or something, I think Harry will play. That's my guess. But I just really struggle to see them playing in a way that it's going to fully shut Jojo down. I don't think that they'll full send it on mid lane in the way that Cloud9 did. Cloud9, I think, has probably a lot more faith in M&S than they do in APA. And I think if Jojo's having a good series, I don't think that top and bot can exploit those lanes in such a way that they're just going to get blown out and run over, right? Like Unforgiven and Ayla are solid. Revenge is solid. I don't think that this is a team that just gets absolutely creamed in the early game. I think that they're more consistent in the mid game and the late game. And I think that Jojo is going to be a big difference maker. So for me, it's like a 3-1 EG.
Copium take for TL. You played NRG, Worlds Bound team, 3-1. Golden Guardians played them, 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
You beat 100 Thieves, 3-1. EG played TSM, who didn't even win a best of 5, and then you got 3-0'd by C9. As purely results-based analysis, you can build a case for TL.
Yep.
And that's why when you see my TL prediction on broadcast, that's where my logic was.
That's why when you see his TL hat, All right, Golden Guardians versus Dignitas. GG coming off of the big kind of upset loss to NRG. Obviously, super hype for NRG. Super disappointing for Golden Guardians, and it would be almost shocking if they didn't make Worlds now, I would say, right? Like, this would be kind of the summer equivalent of when FlyQuest didn't make MSI, in spring after looking so good. They were so competitive. It's like they could be the ones to maybe take down Cloud9, right? And I think this is the first time I've really felt like people talked about Golden Guardians as a true contender.
As even like the favorite.
Exactly. And they've always been the underdog. Even when they've had good runs, they've always been the underdog. They do it through lower bracket. They barely scrape by, whatever. They had a tiebreaker for first place at the end of the regular season. And now they're in the losers bracket. Now they potentially, won't even make Worlds, which would be a huge disappointment. But they are going up against Dignitas. I am still looking at them as, again, huge favorites in this. But how kind of dampened is your excitement or your hype around Dignitas, if at all, after the NRG series?
Around GG, you mean?
Excuse me, yeah.
Yeah.
After GG.
Jat had a great take, which I love. This is the best team to send to the international 4th place match versus EU. So.
Golden Guardians?
Yeah. I trust them in a best of 5 versus EU. Do you trust like TL? No, you're a little skeeved out around like APA or like just the team's inconsistencies.
NRG's going to play the level, so we want them playing T1, not 4th place EU.
Exactly. They would int it
much
because
better matchup against T1.
That's a bad team from Europe, and you don't want NRG against them. C9, just not going to happen, so disqualify them. So GG in the 4th place match sounds really good to me.
Okay.
So you beat Dig, and then you lose to EG/TL winner, and perfect. That's why I feel great about GG losing in the upper bracket. If I look at my eyes, I'm very disappointed because
they were really good in MSI plans, to be fair.
That's what I'm saying.
They slammed MSI plans. And who he was saying at MSI that they would have clapped EU if they played them.
Yeah. They had bad. This is the first time I didn't like their draft versus their opponents. I feel like usually, even in the losses, I'm like, ooh, nice ideas here, Golden Guardians. I felt like there were a number of drafts where I'm like, oh man, NRG has got the better of you here. And then Golden Guardians would get ahead and then lose games. It was funny when I was on stage with Palafox afterwards, and he's like, both our series could have been 3-0s. And it's like, well, both the teams that you beat had 5K gold leads. Like TL did that too. Mm-hmm. And so I do think, one, it's true that NRG is actually really good in mid to late. They have like the really horrendous throws that you remember, but actually they don't often have big gold leads in the early game. And it's actually their mid game team fighting and skirmishing and playmaking as a 5-man unit that gets them wins. And so to be fair to NRG, they do often win games from slightly behind. this was a wacky series with a lot of close games that they had to claw out of. So I still feel okay about Golden Guardians. I think this was a wake-up call. I think maybe coming in as favorites shaped how they approach things. I think maybe the drafts threw them for a loop. I think they mid-jungle played bad. Or not bad, but got outplayed consistently. And that's supposed to be their strength. Like everyone talks about, oh, Licorice gets his counter picks, he does well. Stixxay carries late game. That was still
Licorice
true.
was like V9 in this series.
Him and Stixxay, I think, were both kind of V9. And then their mid jungle was just non-existent. And Palafaker destroyed them with contracts and blah, blah, blah. So like, I just don't think it's going to happen again this exact same way, I guess. It was disappointing, but I think it's recoverable pretty easy.
I will give credit though to NRG for some of these drafts because coming out of the I know you're not taking away credit, but I'm just going to say that from my POV, I didn't come out of some of the picks and bans and be like draft gap, they lose. You know, it didn't feel that way in some of the, like when the core JJ Tarek game, I remember looking at that and being like, oh, you win. You know what I mean? There's some games where you come out and you're just like, oh, you win. When they picked Renekton Nidalee, I was like, this is probably not going to work. Come on, guys. And then it went bad early. Licorice gets a 1v2 kill and stuff. And you're like, okay, you're for sure not going to win now. But it paired really, really well with the Jace Kaisa. The first two games to me were all about FBI, actually. Was about the two Kaisa games where he was really, really problematic for them. I think draft was such an interesting part of it, obviously, because Kaisa was so big in the first two games. They do this kind of full poke comp with the Nidalee in there. But on the other side for GG, they didn't have hard engage really in that game in particular, right? So it was like Huhi on this Maokai instead of a Nautilus or Rakan or a Rel or whatever, something like that. We had River on Viego. And in that game looked so unplayable. Like Licorice was the only one getting anything done. And then there became this kind of like weird wrinkle where they were banning out some of Licorice's picks and stuff and putting him in a position where he wasn't always getting counter picks. So there was a couple games where he was actually playing like the tank side of the matchup, even though he was kind of outplaying in the 1v1 pretty hard. I felt like Licorice was really, really good in this series. He was definitely the standout. Stixxay, I thought his team fighting was really impressive as well, even in some of their losses. Like on the AD Kaisa games, he was actually looking really good, even though I think they maybe would have been better served. I think especially in the last game, if he was actually AP, I think it would have been easier for them to play out potentially because there's a lot of squishy targets and maybe could have kind of succeeded more just by poking them out or something. But I do think they struggled a little bit with their drafts, but they also just made some bad calls as a team and made some mistakes as a team that they got punished pretty heavily for.
Yeah, I think the poke game, I actually didn't hate the level of engage they had because you have the Lissandra and you're supposed to flank and blah, blah, blah. It was more like...
It's hard to find the flanks,
It's hard, I admit, but like, yeah, kind of Maokai saplings that help by space and Viego... Cassante, Maokai, and Lissandra can all try and go in together, and Trish just kind of like chills and backline rocket jumps forward once you have someone ready to start resetting through a fight. Like I actually like the multiple resets through a fight versus a poke comp. Like conceptually, I actually do like it's high execution, but so is a poke comp to be fair. And they did ace them that one time where they got the flank, and then they immediately lost. And it's more like, okay, well you got snowballed on a little bit too hard, and that's credit to NRG for playing a poke comp well, which we just usually don't see in NA. It was more like the Talias in actually game 3 and game 4, where I just didn't see what it was supposed to be doing. It's like. It is a small, soft counter pick into Azir where you can like get shove on him, poke him out, and then like roam around the map. But I'm like, who are you snowballing here? Is it like Rumble into Cassante? Are you trying to like get on Talia or onto Zaya and stuff? It felt just like there was no one that you're trying to accelerate with the Talia. So I didn't really get what the game plan was with the Talia.
Especially in game 4, I really agree with that. I mean, even though Licorice had a really good Poppy game, he was actually winning the 1v1 pretty heavily, almost solo killed Dokla. And I also wanted to mention, because I talked to him after the game, I saw in the back hallway, that weird ult that we were like, what the hell happened with that Poppy ult? So because the previous game he played Rumble, he said Rumble is the only champion he uses Smartcast for. And he forgot to turn Smartcast off when he went in. So he was trying to Q and then do like, not the auto cast, but where you have the cast indicator for R.
Yeah.
So he tapped R to have the cast indicator, and then he wanted to go Q R Q and kill. And he said he would have had a soul kill, at least in his mind. But he went Q R, and then it was like smart casted or whatever, so it just auto started channeling.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Shit,
Yeah.
So he threw it backwards because he would have knocked him to safety, but then of course he doesn't have the damage to kill him.
Yeah, and the buckler auto as well almost killed him anyway. So if you just got the single target knockup, yeah.
So that's what happened with that. But he had a great game with individually on that. But I agree, it was like where you really playing towards.
It's like you can crap on a GP, but like it almost never matters with first strike GP where you're just like whatever, bro.
Poppy can't do anything with that lead.
Yeah, Poppy becomes really hard to kill, but like it's Xayah and Azir, like you have the DPS at some point to punch through the Poppy. Maybe it goes from 20 minutes to 25 if the Poppy gets ahead. But like, they were just those kinds of things where I'm like, normally you have really clear game plans, and I love your drafts. And this was the first time I was like,
Yeah. Who he even had so many good ults on the Amumu in that game, and it just didn't matter at all. It's just completely irrelevant. Poppy Jarvan is also a weird combo where I feel like
wall stuns.
In theory, you have that, but then a lot of time you're actually just griefing each other because a lot of times what happens is Jarvan ults them and then the person is running away, so they run to the other side and then they're out of range of the wall tackle, so you're actually just blocked from wall tackling them by the Jarvan ulti unless you're like right on that side. So like there's weird interactions where a lot of times it actually just griefs the Poppy.
Unless Poppy's already in a spot, like J4 EQR range is so far that like Poppy's like, hold on, I'm coming.
Yeah, and what are you gonna do? Flash into the Cataclysm to then stun them, right? It becomes really, really awkward. So I feel like their comp didn't have a lot of synergy. I feel like they did have some weird drafts, but I still have confidence, I think, that this team can get it done against Dignitas. But I will say Dignitas had a good series against TSM. I think Jensen was definitely a standout in that one. I thought he had some really impressive games. And Dig did, I think, perform a lot better than probably most people were expecting, right? Because at least going into that, I was thinking it was going to be pretty TSM favored. Last week when we were talking about it, Dignitas had a really bad end of the regular season. They were looking very, very inconsistent. I didn't really have a tremendous amount of faith in their bot lane. You know, Santorin and Jensen had kind of been up and down and stuff, but their series was definitely an improvement against TSM.
Yeah, I think I had said that 4 out of 5 positions should be TSM favored.
Yeah.
And definitely didn't look like that in the games. I think the series was still close. Tomo had a pretty decent series, showed some flexibility, popping off with Ziggs randomly. You're like, oh, okay, so you're not just an Aphelios player. I liked seeing the Zeri as well come in. It's still something that's prioed a little bit in LCK and stuff like that. It's not as popular in NA. So it was cool to see that. Jensen also playing, to your point, like Tristana, which I think he had played 7 times total, maybe including the series even. I'm not quite sure, but it's
probably he has barely played any ADCs, but he's being more adaptable. Yeah,
so like him branching out a little bit, I liked even seeing the Ornn for Rich. Just like they showed more flexibility here. Like, Blanc Tomp didn't work. Did pop off with the Gwen. You have the Cassante as well. Like, I think this team has a little bit more flexibility. If they want to play standard and Rich on a tank, they can. Or if they feel like they're losing a series, they can just like flip some weird shit. Is it going to work versus Golden Guardians? I don't know, but I did see a lot of good stuff out of their 3 lanes in Santorin to think like, oh, well, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I think they would have to play at their really top level to be able to get it done. I really favor Golden Guardians bottom lane for sure. But across most roles, honestly, like across almost like all roles.
What we say last time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. NRG, though, like I said last week, I thought the NRG series was the hardest to predict because if they play at their best, they could kind of have those moments. Dignitas hasn't really shown us those moments. I mean, when you look at their regular season, they didn't have a lot of those kind of games. I'm actually going to go back and check what their record was versus kind of some of the top teams, because if I recall correctly, they were not beating really any top teams.
No, I think they had like a good start there, 4-2 in the first 2 weeks, but then dropped off pretty quickly. I think the one thing I'll say, Palafox plays really aggressive. He is someone who's always looking for plays. His Azir, even like as soon as he hits level 6, he wants flash shuffles, and he will commit his flash if your flash is down to like find shuffle angles. And he found them on Gory, and he actually beat up Gory quite a bit. So I just don't think Jensen even plays Azir that way. You know, like he'll find the shuffle when it's kind of free, but he won't like flash commit for it out of the blue and try and like solo kill you. Palafox even died for it. It's not like it's always a good play, but just like mindset wise, that's something that they don't look for. I think Santorin can, in good games, match River in terms of like Santorin is known to do some creative paths sometimes. He's not quite as crazy, but he does like to impact lanes early. I think River wasn't terrible. I said like the mid jungle. It was more mid than jungle because there was the good Jarvan game obviously for River.
The Jarvan Rumble game worked really well, but the Jarvan Poppy game didn't.
Yeah, and he was like flashing under turret to kill people. He was kind of 1v9ing that one Jarvan game. So I think River had like an okay series, but I do think Santorin at his best can match River. And then like I think I'm just more concerned about Jensen being able to play aggro enough to put pressure on Golden Guardians, because if you let Golden Guardians make plays, they do make a lot of plays. Like one of those games had, what was it, like 37 kills in 28 minutes or something? Like the NRG Golden Guardian series was like a freaking LPL series with some of these games.
Yeah. For what it's worth, so Dig was 2-6 against top 4 teams. So they had 1 win against EG and 1 win against Liquid.
That's what I have to say. Golden Guardians? No.
Yeah, Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians is I think is a heavy favorite in this.
Yeah,
we'll see. They're coming out. We'll see how much the loss affected them, but I think it's probably going to bounce back. I think it's probably going to be a 3-0 as well.
All right, perfect. Now it's time to move on to
NRG
Cloud9.
You think you can just teleport in here and push us forward?
2 hours late, shows up.
I skipped all the boring stuff and just wanted to come in to talk about
contracts.
Cloud9 not being able to dodge energy any longer.
Oh.
They tried their hardest. My boy Contracts Viego.
Well rested, feeling good.
I don't know. Do you guys want the full story out here?
Let's just move on. Let's just move on. Executive decision. We're just moving into the series. C9 versus NRG. We could start kind of with. I mean, C9 chose the other side of the bracket. I think C9 did say that it was because they were trying to dodge TL though, so they specifically said that. So we'll see if that comes to bite them a bit.
I remember before their last regular season game versus CLG though, walking backstage because I always go to the bathroom
versus CLG
between them versus NRG. Jack was talking about. I was like, oh yeah, good luck. You guys have been crushing, blah blah blah. And he's like, I don't know, we're playing NRG. They always beat us. So it's definitely something that they do think about.
It was 2-0 against both those teams, so it just seems like an easy one to decide there. I think you do have to take, because I wasn't taking the 2-0 in the regular season that seriously. I think you have to be a lot more serious now about it after beating Golden Guardians. So C9 3-0. In a very unconvincing way. Multiple of their players said afterwards, like, if we can win that series 3-0 after how poorly we played, how bad is EG? That was their perspective after talking to like Zven and Fudge about that.
And Blabber even said in his stage interview, he's like, we're not dropping a game in playoffs. He said, like, yeah, I know that was how we play like crap.
I believe you when you say that after what you just did.
Yeah, and he's like, we're not dropping a game in the rest of the playoffs. Yeah, it definitely wasn't the most convincing 3-0. Zven was really funny on the cast, even talking about it. He was talking about how, especially after game 1, when they beat EG, there was people were really focused on his reactions because he just was like, and then he's holding up the question mark thing and stuff. But he said the funniest thing was he said he leans back and he's just like, what the heck? How did we just win that game? And he said he looked over and just with the way the setup is, opposite him is Revenge. And he looks over and he's going like this. And Revenge is also just going like this. And he's like, they're both just like, he's like, how do we win this game? And Revenge is like, how do we lose this game? He said they're both just mirrored reactions to it. So this is pretty funny.
Small note on the stage setup, since we haven't really talked about it. I love it.
Really like
you
it.
saw, I don't know if you saw FBI in one of the player cams after winning a team fight. He was like yelling at Huki across the stage.
We finally got some.
Yeah, because FBI was talking mad shit before the series about how Huki's so confident, so like way too hyped up on his own play, and he's gonna crap on him. And then like I forget when he did it, but in one of the games he was like, yes.
He's getting salty because so many people are talking about the Huki effect.
103's bot lane was just carried by Huki the whole time.
Yeah.
FBI's a fraud. Yeah.
I saw him tweeting out too. I think that he's like, wow, NRG with a worse bot lane made worlds and stuff like that. But to be fair, I feel like everyone was saying it was a better bot lane, so I didn't really get that tweet.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, a slight upgrade.
Yeah. Calm down there.
Take a deep breath.
But I do like the cross-stage interaction type of stuff, so maybe don't calm down. That was good.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. I mean, this is going to be an exciting series. Again, I said last week that I think it's the NRG series was the hardest one to predict. I do think it's, again, kind of hard to predict this one. I would not be shocked if you told me Cloud9 3-0'd. I would not be shocked if you told me that NRG, wins this series as well. And it just really depends on what energy is going to show up. I do think that, they played really well against Golden Guardians. I also think we talked about it a lot in last series, they created some really big draft advantages against Golden Guardians too, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if they'll be able to do that in the same way against Cloud9. So that's kind of like my biggest question mark is, can they actually create these kind of draft situations where they can create a big advantage against Cloud9? Because I do feel like that was the biggest component that was surprising in their win against Golden Guardians.
Yeah, I mean, we had a long discussion on NRG possibilities of upsetting Golden Guardians last time around, and it sounds like your stance is very similar.
Yeah, it is
to that previous stance, with the added little benefit of like, oh, now you have more confidence in the drafting.
At their best, they could beat anyone, and I truly believe that. But at their worst, they could get slammed.
Yeah, it's like, we have seen you lose to the worst teams in the league, Immortals twice, type of thing. But you have to give them credit now. Come on. Well, last time you guys had this whole giant argument
where he wasn't giving enough credit.
You still refused to agree, even by the end of the show, trying to like mediate, and you're like, no.
I'll stand my ground.
They don't get credit. This is something in playoffs, though. Absolutely now. And to be fair, I look back at the regular season power rankings. I had them 4th. You both had them 5th. So I'm actually the original NRG fan.
No, you do not get to take this stance.
Okay, so
after literally at the end, you just still refuse to give them any credit.
Yeah, well, so to relitigate that argument, they have been in the postseason 3 times and 2 times going into this one, and prior to this playoff run, they had only beaten in 8th place Golden Guardians in the losers bracket of Summer Split.
They lost some really close series.
They played close series versus top teams. But my point was they hadn't actually won a big series.
And now they've beat second place.
And that's why I think you saw a big reaction out of them, because they hadn't done this before. And so to be fair, I think the reason that it is cool and the reason I don't want to rewrite history and say, they've been a great playoff team the whole time, is because when they do get a big win, I want it to be properly celebrated. So yes, I poo-pooed their previous accomplishments a little bit, because now I get to be like, let's effing go. I was so excited for them being like, we talked already narratively about why this is such an easy team to root for, but also like, even as an analyst, they're a fun team to talk about because they do prove you wrong. Like, they got 8th place in spring last year. They come into Summer Split and like, this team's gonna suck. Dokla's not enough of a change to be good. There's no freaking way Dokla coming in is just like suddenly gonna revitalize this team. Boom, top half of the team. Okay, this split, I predict them to be top 4. They get 5th. They actually let me down a little bit. And in playoffs, I'm like, I'm sick of believing in you guys. Like, you don't actually do anything in playoffs. You never actually do anything in playoffs. You like have these like surprising runs against top teams, but you never actually do it when it counts. And then they did it when it counts. So I actually really like teams like this where like I have my strong opinions on if they're good or not, but then they actually surprise you sometimes. I don't like when I have strong opinions on teams and I'm actually always right that like, yeah, you do just suck or something. So I actually, going into the C9 matchup now, have a lot more faith. That
their series are fun to watch.
Their series always are fun to watch. They're hard to predict. They play aggressively. And this is when the C9 one really matters, is they have actually played full 5-game best of 5s against them in the last 2 playoffs. And Contract was saying on stage, he lives in Blabber's head rent-free.
Well, I think Contracts didn't say that. I think it's who else? The other
they
guy
both said it, because Palafox said my boy Contracts is in Blabber's head, and then Contract said rent-free.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, I'm excited for the series a lot. I will say, as far as concerns for NRG, I think Dokla has just not been good this whole split. I think he was super outclassed by Licorice, like hardcore outclassed by Licorice in the previous series. Fudge, to be fair, was not as good as Licorice in the regular season, so maybe he can't do what Licorice was doing to him. But that was definitely a big concern for me. You know, had some of the games been more even across the map, you know, that's something that they could have potentially taken advantage of. And C9, as much as, you know, I think Contracts is deserving of the credit for being one of those guys that can go toe to toe with Blabber, because he's down to go crazy. Like, Blabber's gonna be crazy. Contract's like, all right, I'm crazy too, bro. Like, I'll fight you, you know. So,
but except Contracts is even more, because Contracts doesn't have the rubric of like, all right, you need to farm and then you can go crazy. Contract's like, I don't have to farm.
I'll just start in the side brush. I'm not doing camps.
Yeah, literally minute 1, he's like, all right, let's start our invade now or whatever. But he is, to like the point of the Viego game, it's like you can have these giant pop-off
and
games.
the Italy game
was come from
really
him
good
as well. Yeah. But to the Dokla point that you're making at the beginning, the most worrying thing to me was that it wasn't a lot of things where it was like, oh, it's because he's against Licorice that this is happening. There were moments like, you know, when they're coming to tower dive him and then he dashes and flashes early and then they're like, oh, okay, I guess now we tower dive you because nobody even had tower aggro and there was like nothing on them. And it's small things like that where it's like, well, that doesn't seem like it was because of your opponent, you know, some like unforced error type things that could be repeatable. Against Cloud9.
Yeah, I think there's all those concerns where NRG just like kind of runs it themselves without it being because of the enemy. I think one of them might have even said that their worst enemy is themselves.
Yeah, they've definitely said that a couple times.
Yeah, the thing that I actually really like, and I told people already to watch the video of their like comms. There was a point though where they were arguing all about this dive between turrets that they went for.
The bot lane one?
It was a top lane play.
Oh.
They had like the funny effects they put on it.
Is that the one Contracts is like, oh, the best teams in the world are going to play on the edge. We don't have to go into the towers. We just stay between the towers and we fight them here. And everyone's like, oh my God, here we go again.
Well, but I actually love that mindset because you're not trying to win the easy way. You're trying to make the right play.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of teams in North America, especially the top teams, have had a history of like, well, I can just pick this like scaling thing and like win like this. And I think that can really come bite you in the ass, especially if you're trying to get better. Like the mindset that he had in that video, I actually really liked. And of course, they've all argued till they're blue in the face and you get sick of it a little bit. But his perspective being like, why would I go for a play that can work but not get me the biggest result? Just because it's easier, I want to go for the play that rides the line because that's what the top teams in the world do, and I want to be a top team in the world. And so, like, I'm not going to go for an easy play. And I think that's something that has allowed them to continue to improve and seemingly punch above their weight.
And you see it in the gameplay because they're not afraid to fail. And you know that because they failed a lot.
They've up and down there.
And then they keep doing it. And you're like, wow, you know, yeah, they definitely have that mindset.
Lose is improve, and these guys are going 0-2 against Immortals. Exactly. So they're improving a lot.
Wow, that's
if you can make a dive versus solo, you can make a dive versus Licorice. Same dive. Nameplate's off, same guy. Make the dive happen.
I will say, unironically, I think Palafox, I mean, I voted for Palafox above EMENES mid lane. I think that's an area that I favor them.
Did you have him on your
Yeah, I put him third team
Oh,
All-Pro.
nice. Me too.
Yeah, I put him third team All-Pro, and I think that Palafox has also been really good in playoffs, right? So I think, unironically, mid lane is favored towards NRG. I start to struggle to really say, like, I think that this is a team that, you know, at their best can really, you know, play at the top level. But I start to struggle to think who else on NRG, if I'm looking at like a 1-for-1 type thing, do I really favor over their opponent? Because I mean, Blabber is borderline MVP. I can't really give you that. I think Doko's been underperforming. Can't really give you that. I think Berserker kind of just does what FBI does better. So I can't really give you that. But they can create really cool situations and play aggressive in a way that, you know, can get them games. And I also think they really deserve a lot of credit for their drafts in the previous series, which was the other X factor. If they can recreate situations like that, I mean, some of those things you can say it's some column A, some column B. Like you could say, oh well, Golden Guardians just drafted bad. C9 wouldn't do that way, but I mean, NRG created some drafts against a really top team that made it look super hopeless for their opponents.
Yeah, I especially think on your FBI point because that's obviously going to be the most scary one for anybody on the
Had
NRG
amazing
side.
Kai'Sa games though.
That was going to be my point, is that he looks just so much better on the Kai'Sa side of the Xayah Kai'Sa that might be, it seemed like they were super flexible in drafting something, but that might be some restriction that you can identify, because Berserker has no restrictions. Berserker, like, slamming the Zeri, slamming the Ashe, like all these different types of AD carries, and you still have confidence for Cloud9 to, you know, play that type of comp out, as well as him to just individually be able to fill whatever role.
One little add-on I would give is I think his Kai'Sa was really good, but also his Ezreal in the previous series.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was about to go. It's like FBI broke the Ezreal out, I think, first of anyone in postseason, and then Berserker played it like a jungle Ezreal, you know, where he's like solo killing bot, ganking top, shooting it all down bot lane.
Because he had to, and then he won the game single-handedly for them. So
his team was inting.
Is that a criticism? Like,
No. I'm saying like Berserker is nuts, and so like his team was inting him. Mid had played well the first two games. I think EMENES would have got player of the series, if not for game 3, where he kind of got just like gapped a little bit, and then Ezreal still wins the game. And I think EG had some bad fights and target. So it's like clearly Berserker's the focus. He's the one popping off, and they just like never really got on top of him.
I forgot who was chasing down, but the one he was chasing down, and he had his like mystic shot is like right next to the minion.
Yeah, that was the solo kill.
versus Kaisa, the solo kill.
Yeah, and Kaisa was like trying to kite into the minions, and it was just like pixel perfect. Boom, you're dead.
I liked how he turned around to
Get the CS.
Yeah, just like, oh, this guy's an 80 carry. This guy clicks heads.
This guy farms.
I like money.
This guy farms.
I like money, exactly. I will say the like top to bottom roll to roll thing, I think is a trap a little bit.
But who cares? It didn't work against Golden Guardians either.
Yeah, exactly. I think NRG is a team that's like greater than the sum of their parts in that sense. I think Dokla has lost lanes often, but then like his GP in the regular season got slammed in lane, but then he actually was doing 6k damage in team fights with like barrel combos and ults and stuff like that. And I think this is a team that knows how to break people out of bad situations, or like has enough good mental that like, oh, I'm inting, well, I'll get a good fight later. You know, so I'm a little less worried about Berserker versus FBI heads up and more about, okay, what's Ignar going to do? Combo with contracts to do weird shit mid to like exploit EMENES or like camp Berserker. I don't know what they're going to do. Their drafts are very weird. Sometimes they int their draft, but like sometimes they have these like giga win drafts too.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about the bottom lane. I'm mostly worried about top lane and what kind of stuff they can do around Dokla. But my biggest worry is, and I was the only one to predict them to get the upset against Golden Guardians.
What do you mean?
But because no, he did not.
You just check the graphic.
Check the tapes. Dive are the predictions that matter.
It's so funny that no one gives you any credit for actually predicting them on the dive. Like in the post-match chat, everyone's like tweeting at me and like the graphic and all that stuff. And it's just like, I didn't predict them to win. I'm trolling.
Because Mark is always doing the prediction that he thinks is wrong. So every time that he gets it right, the teams also are always tweeting at you. They're like, oh my God, Mark believes in us.
No one, dude, Fudge called me a rat after I predicted them to lose as I was leaving the studio. And I was like, do you not know that it's the opposite? And he's like, oh. And he thinks EMENES hates me. Not like actually hates me, but you know, thinks I have beef with C9 or something. And I was like, don't tell EMENES. But yeah, I'm trolling. So now Fudge knows, but a lot of the guys, no idea.
But yeah, I was gonna say the only thing now is that because this is like these are still the CLG players, and NRG like co-opted the name of the non-rational gamers, keeping that same counter logic, theme alive. Now that they've done a big upset and they've taken down Golden Guardians, now I'm even more worried. It doesn't give me more confidence.
Now you're like 3-0 C9.
Because there's so
60-minute series.
There's so much variance in their play now. I'm like, okay, well, we got the high end of the variance. Well, are we due for some
We're at the
big,
top of the roller coaster.
some big F-ups?
Here's the pitch. Truly random events will have runs. That's the thing that humans think pattern means just good, must be bad next, but truly random would actually be to beat Cloud9 and go into finals in the winner side.
I will say, unironically, I think there's something to having a bit of a come down series after a crazy emotional high of qualifying for Worlds. And, you do wonder if it hits that little bit of that sense of, we did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we did it, and we're like we accomplished it. It's like this is the highest high for probably some of the players that they've ever had as far as career wise.
Their brains are flooded with dopamine. Now they're gonna crash.
Yeah. So it's you do, there can be something to that where you can have this amazing series, you accomplish something huge, and then for Cloud9, like they don't really care that they're in upper bracket finals. They're just looking to win the whole tournament, right? So it's kind of just another series, I think. It's a different mindset.
They probably got no high at all from beating EG like they did.
Yeah, I mean,
they were like, "Whoa, okay, I guess we did that."
Zven was even saying on the cast that it was cool seeing the reaction from the NRG players. When I was talking to him, but because for him it's become such an expectation to go to Worlds that
they still have life in them.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the passion.
Yeah.
I'm just dead inside.
Yeah. He's gone international too many times. But I think it should be a really fun series. At the end of the day, I have to predict C9, I think, still, because I do think that they're the more solid team. But I do think that NRG has a legitimate chance to win. Like my head still says C9, but I think that if NRG could create drafts, like draft advantages in the same way that they did against Golden Guardians, I would not be shocked to see them win.
I go 3-2 C9. I think it's the third time in a row. They've met in best of fives in playoffs. Always a 3-2, always C9.
So they're due for the loss, actually. Cloud9 finally will crumble in a best of 5 to NRG. I have to keep going with the boys. I honestly, after that, 12 kill Viego game, you've got my vote, buddy.
3-1, 3-2.
It's 3-2 for sure.
3-2 for sure. They'll finally win the best of 5. All right, I think that's going to do it for the regular playoffs portion of the episode. Now we're going to transition to the Diveys.
The Diveys.
Woo!
What is this? The third SPLITUAL Diveys?
Third SPLITUAL Diveys.
What happened here? Azael just chugged his already?
Yeah, top me off.
Don't look at the brand. We're not sponsored. You're going to pour this over a laptop. Heads up.
Yeah. It's Kobe's laptop. Doesn't matter.
It's fine.
All right, we did it. No problems.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone,
gents.
for another excellent season of the Dive.
Incredible.
Technically, we have one more episode left, but we'll go ahead and kick things off.
Yep, and this Diveys, we've made some upgrades. You may have noticed our beautiful set with our red tablecloth and our
Danglies.
stuff. We also got some pros involved, so we have pros now announcing the categories for us, which is going to be wonderful. And we're just going to kick it off here for the first ever Divey of this Diveys.
I thought you loved the SPLITUAL thing.
Yeah, it's the third SPLITUAL Diveys.
Okay.
Yeah, third SPLITUAL Diveys.
Hello, I'm Revenge, and I'm happy to be invited to the Diveys, my favorite league podcast award show. This Divey goes to the most underrated player of the split.
And it's going to go to Tactical.
My boy, Tactical. I definitely did not brute force everyone to agree with this one. I definitely didn't yell at them and tell them it had to be Tactical. I actually think you did have a really good split. I think Tactical with good mental. Was it Doublelift who made that tier list? You said that he can be one of the best players in the region easily, and I think he had pretty good mental this time around. It felt like he went through the gulag, I guess, with TSM and whatnot last year, and went through some lows and Immortals last year or last split. I think this time he was just vibing.
Yeah, he did, and that's why he's low rated, right? That's why would be underrated.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking for players that are on these bottom teams, and then Tactical was one of the bright spots. There were a lot of games where they didn't win, where you're like, oh, maybe they could scrape that together while he's pulling off, some big Aphelios games or something like that.
We created a stat called players of the game per game. So how many times do you get a player, like does your team win to get a player of the game?
Oh, it
and
should
then,
be players of the game per win then, right?
Well, yeah, I guess it's players of the game per win is what it is.
Yeah.
And so he was actually the number one player. He had 0.65. They won, I think.
So basically, when they do win, he carries them.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. He's underrated.
Yeah, I also think some other players that deserve some mention. I think Chime was actually really good for TSM, and not a lot of people were really talking about him.
Yeah, I was going to say Bugi, so
Boogie was also really good.
TSMs.
Yeah, I think TSM had a couple guys in there that had really good splits, and it's kind of funny. I don't know. Do you think Doublelift was underrated in this split, or do you think he was appropriately rated?
It's always hard to say underrated for someone that famous because he has so many fans that are just always going to, have full faith in him.
Yep.
But, and I think it's just really hard because everybody looks at that team.
Appropriately rated.
Yeah, everyone looks at that team and they're like, yeah, he's the one doing the most work. So I think it is.
Yeah.
People gave him a lot of respect still this year. People were like, wow, he came back and he actually showed he can still compete. That's why so many people, at least myself, I was really happy to hear that he's not going to retire. I was actually pretty scared of that because I thought it was so cool he could come back. 30-year-old gamer doing it up there for.
He's got to get on the same team as Solo. Get out the gamer dad's team.
Doing it up there for the grandpas, and he can compete in the LCS for sure. Here, it seems so clear. Just needs some extra help on the rest of the team. I think that team definitely gets
they're gonna make changes,
like reorganized, but he definitely proved that he can do it, and he still has the drive as well. And I think it's just better for the league if someone like that with so much history is competing for our newer players to play against instead of like shit talking them on co-streams where there's no like back and forth interaction. it's way better if he's in there and then you get a chance to actually do something back.
Yep. It's always weird to do most underrated since I live in like a bubble of talking with people who are all watching the games and they're intelligent. Yep. It's like, well, everyone agrees and Tactical was actually pretty good this split, but I think community-wise, what we're looking
intelligent?
For. Wow. I struggled to say that, but ultimately, yes. Moving on.
Now it's time for the Divey for best game of the split.
which goes to Hullbreaker Yone by Licorice in Golden Guardians vs. Fly in week 1. Now, this one might seem a little...
This was my fave.
This was Azael's fave in particular. I think this was a very fun game, had interesting picks, and this was before people knew FlyQuest was terrible.
Yep.
So we just thought this was a good game. In hindsight, might not have aged as well. It's like that old film that you show and you're like, no, there's good things in here. It doesn't quite hold up.
Yeah, they're saying things that maybe aren't appropriate anymore.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
in the moment, we were like, wow, number 2 versus number 3 going at it again with Hullbreaker Yone.
And I just think for me, a lot of my favorite games are when people are just doing kind of a little bit of meta breaking picks. And so I really enjoyed this, that it was Yone top.
You just love perma split pushing. So
true. I love that too. and we never get it in pro. So it was really cool that he did this build that I thought really made sense. It was against a Gragas, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
He was doing Hullbreaker Yone. So against these like AP tanks, they just don't have the damage to actually kill up the juiced up cannons. It becomes so hard to stop the split push. He even went Iceborne Gauntlet. He was doing this whole kind of build.
It was tanky. Yeah.
And so he said in the interview afterwards, who told him to do it? Because someone... Do you remember?
I remember vaguely what you're talking about, where he was like, oh, I didn't scrim it. Someone just told me.
Someone just told me it was good. I forget who it was.
Yeah, he was like, oh, yeah, they can't clear the wave, so I built it. Yeah.
He gave credit to somebody.
Yeah. Okay. But that was just a really fun game because it was different. And I mean, for the same reason, I also really enjoyed Rich Alawi, Rich Quinn, the people who are busting
I enjoyed
out
the Alawi.
some of these different
The first
picks.
time around.
the
Second one was pretty fun, too.
The second...
You guys just kind of swing.
It's like that sequel that didn't need to get made, but got made.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed it, but...
It's like Game of Thrones, the later seasons. I don't need those.
Ran out of original material.
Just watch the early stuff. Watch the early Alawi game.
Yeah, I mean, the first Alawi one was like my runner-up submission for it, but that's because of all the backloaded dive Alawi love history.
Yeah.
And he finally pulled it out.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, just take the dub. And then he had to go.
And
do
show
like
why sometimes you don't pick it.
0-7 in like the first 8-10
Solo
minutes.
killed like 3 times by Xante under tower. At least twice. Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
Next is the divey for best out-of-game performance.
Dun 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 dun.
Licorice.
It was a late steal. I felt like Zven was a shoo-in for the 2-time repeat, but a fight video of surprising quality acting out of Licorice.
Licorice was really funny
with
in the
good
heist video.
jokes. That I think stole it out from under Sven's nose in the last possible second. He also was funny in the Golden Guardians pieces that they made. He's done good interviews in general.
Yeah.
The Anero head rub one was really funny in that. Yeah. His acting in the heist video, he was really funny actually.
He's got a very good kind of like low key deadpan humor that he can bring to every part, and he did not have to like redo takes on anything either. So he's very efficient to work with.
The fudge took my job. The like my money's on the guards. Like all those little clips that came in were I was good.
Him just flipping Kobe the birds in the shark outfit at the end. Like
his face, he just actually just looks so done. So
yeah. It was really funny. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a really cool video too. They did some really cool fight scenes with Kobe, and they had Fudge in there, they had Busio in there, they had Licorice in there. So definitely check out the promo for the season finals, which is very quickly coming up. Going to be
it's called
the
Prudential Job.
There you go.
Check that out on YouTube. Give us some more views so we can do another one.
Kobe wants to fight more people.
It was they're so like it's hard to do it, and I get injured most of the time, but it is really fun to do. So yeah, definitely want to do them again. But our finals coming up too.
Yeah, only 2 weeks. Pretty crazy.
The next divey is the ELO HELL Award.
Oh boy.
And this one is going to go to someone who was definitely stuck in ELO Hell.
There were a lot. This one, I felt like we had a lot of, options here. It's kind of also with like underrated awards. It's a Venn diagram. Some of them are in both. But the winner for this one,
Impact. Definitely, I think the differentiation between underrated and ELO Hell Award is that Impact's the greatest North American top laner of all time. He played fine. Like, he just wasn't talked about either way. Whereas Tactical, people have flamed him more in the past. Mm-hmm. There's a bit of a fall from grace.
Everyone agreed that Impact did well, and his team really sucked.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that he's people still rate him as really good, right? So he's not underrated because people are still like, yeah, Impact is really good, and he's still playing really well too on stage. And then he's on FlyQuest, which was revealed. I love, by the way, how the fraud talk and how many teams were throwing around fraud allocations. And
everyone's a fraud.
FlyQuest is a fraud, and then they also threw out more fraud out. That was actually pretty funny.
Takes one to know one. I think the thing that speaks to it the most as well is when Travis did his like $15 square thing, and Impact was $1, and everyone's like, Impact's $1, I'm grabbing him. Every single pro was basically like snatching him up right away. So tough split for Impact, but I think he'll be fine. He'll bounce back. Who knows what happens to that roster?
He's someone that like a lot of times you'll talk about you're on a bad team that can really affect your career, that can really affect your reputation. This had no effect on how people look at Impact. Impact, I think is going to be absolutely fine. He could easily end on another top team next split, so he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, congratulations, Impact. Another award.
Another award for him. Not the one he wanted, probably. Would have preferred a title. Got this instead. Sorry, buddy.
Now it's time for the best play of the split.
Kobe, you want to announce this one?
I love this one because I casted both games that were in the same week, I believe, that were like back to back. Stixxay has these Aphelios. The first one, he wins the entire game by destroying the enemy team at this Elder Dragon fight and 2v1ing the enemy backline and even his own teammates afterwards, because they end the game right after that. I think it was like Licorice, and he's like, I don't know what happened. We were in the Dragon Pit, and I looked up, and Stixxay killed everyone, and then we just won the game. And all I see was pretty much like the same thing. Yeah, I don't know. And I was casting it live, and he's just flashing into the back line on them with Aphelios. And then he does it another game right after that where the enemy team's trying to dive him, and he 2v1s the divers, like sidestepping the Everfrost and completely outplaying. So we went with the first one, which was my favorite, which was the Elder Dragon fight. But man, yeah, he had some really, really big game-winning plays.
He's been insane in late game team fights all split long, and even in the series that they just lost, that Kai'Sa was like doing its damnedest to blow up contracts.
Yeah, he was looking really, really good. This next one.
This divey is the LINSANITY Award, and I'll let Mark explain.
For people who don't know, there was a basketball player, Jeremy Lin, who subbed in. He didn't have that much acclaim. He was kind of like a D-League player, sometimes subbed in, but wasn't great. But for some reason, there's like an injury, and he had to play for the New York Knicks. And he subs in and just becomes the best player in the world out of nowhere for 7 games or whatever it is. And he is scoring 30 points a game. He's hitting game winners. These like buzzer beaters. It's in New York, so of course, very large audience, and everyone's popping off like, this guy's actually incredible. He's the best player in the world. He's going to win MVP. And then he kind of came back down to earth, and he's a good player. And so the winner of the LINSANITY Award is Insanity. As you would expect, he subbed in for Ruby. Carries this team. They're looking really good. Yeah. And then they kind of come back down to earth. They get 6th place in the regular season, and then they get 7th, 8th in the playoffs. But he is good.
He is good.
He is good.
Yeah, he is good. Yeah. And for a couple weeks there was some talk about could he be an MVP conversation? And I think he was like borderline of like, hey man, if they keep playing like this, if they beat top teams too.
I think they were 4-2 or something. And it's like you got subbed out, they lost 3, and it's like if he comes back in and goes 4-2 again, you're like, what are you gonna say?
You have to consider it.
He certainly fit the rubric of most valuable player to that team.
Yeah.
And especially because you have the experiment where they take him out, and then everyone's like, well, they look like dog doo-doo when they didn't have him. And he had so many really big games for them. Of course, like you say, it kind of petered off towards the end. Also had a couple of rough games, but absolutely amazing year for Insanity overall.
And head tap to APA.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of did it too, but just less.
Yeah,
it was actually condensed timeline because
he had 1 week, right? He had like 3-0 weekend or something like that.
Yeah, I think they went like 5-2 with him or something, or I can't remember. But they won a lot of games.
The first week was super good. The second week was also pretty good, and then
the first weekend I think he came in was undefeated that first week.
He was 2-0
and so much hype.
Yeah, he also
him.
didn't die. So there's a big thing about his KDA.
Yeah.
And he did with interesting picks too, so he was easy to cheer for. But yeah.
It was definitely exciting, and both NA talent, both academy guys who came up. It was definitely cool to see that.
Now we're giving away the best cast of the Split Award.
And the winner is
Who is it, Mark?
it's us. The Dive Cast.
What? Oh my God! We finally won a diving.
diving.
Yes, thanks guys. Who wants to give the
Cheers,
acceptance
cheers.
speech? Kobe, you want to give the acceptance speech?
No, you got it, Mark.
No, I shouldn't give it because I actually voted not for this one. I voted for the Immortals cast against Dignitas with me, Flowers, and Azael, where we trolled with Tactical.
You're leaving our boy Kobe out?
I left him out.
Well, the producers
Selfishly, I voted for
the
that one.
producers put the dive cast on a playoffs match, and they didn't put that cast on a playoffs
True.
match. So
True.
the producers.
I've been outvoted. I can live with the results of winning this one as opposed to winning that other one.
Yeah, the dive cast. We haven't even talked about that. That's coming up this week. We're actually going to do a whole
Yeah.
playoff series.
We get a whole series.
yeah, potentially
Really,
5
I did
games.
not look at the assignments.
Now you know. There you go.
I saw a look in your eye where you're like, huh?
Mark's just as shocked as the audience.
What a reveal!
my favorite part of our cast so far, because we've had a couple of them. They've all been the best cast of
Yeah,
the year.
all of them equally. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in sequential order. Was when one time, because I always in TriCast, I like point at the next people to talk and direct a lot. And one of the times I'm like pointing at Azael, and Azael is like, what the fuck are you pointing at me? There's action going on. I'm not, wait, I am the play-by-play.
Yeah. It took me about a second to start the play-by-play. It was some bot lane fight, and so the play-by-play always stands furthest left.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's like that, but that's just how it is.
Tradition, yeah.
It's tradition, I guess. And everyone in every league does this. The play-by-play stands on the left. So I'm standing on the left. Kobe points over, and I'm like, there's a fight. I go like this, and then I'm like, oh.
There's no one left of me.
There's no one left of me. I guess it's me. My time to talk. So I jumped into the play-by-play, but that was fun. I've had so much fun, honestly, doing the play-by-play.
I actually love that angle of like everybody's looking to their left and you're like, oh shit, the last person, there's no one left of them.
Yeah, that's how Flowers knows as well. It's a standard thing. You look to your left. If there's no one there, you gotta talk
My
fast.
time to talk.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. I'm really excited to do the dive TriCast for a playoff series. That should be a banger.
Time for the Sorry You Didn't Get an Award.
Oh my God, who could it be? You just have to go back and look at who also last time got a sorry you didn't get an award because of this is part 2 basically.
Mm-hmm. And it's gonna go to
The streak continues. NRG, the boys.
Okay, it's worth noting it's not a streak because it's a new award.
Yeah.
Last time was a sorry you didn't get an award. Now it's a sorry you didn't get award again award.
Yeah.
It's a totally different category.
first time.
First time
My
debut
mistake,
of the
my mistake.
Yeah.
no all pros, no coaching staff of the split,
And it's
but
hard to
attended
say
worlds.
what is the bigger moment for them from this week, winning this divey or going to Worlds.
We had cameras on them after they won the Worlds qualifying match, but we don't have cameras on them right now.
Yeah, true.
So who's to say they're not even
When
they're
they
more
listen to this,
happy.
they will be crying even more tears of joy.
Yeah. It's gonna be crazy.
They also enhance each other. This award looks a lot funnier after attending Worlds. No all pros, no coaching staff of the split. They're really not that good, but they are going to Worlds.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to Worlds. Might win the split.
I voted for 2 of them for
going to
all
New
pros.
Jersey, going to be playing in a stadium, but really, and there's nothing to really pay attention to over there.
But again, we saved their split. They get an award. Yeah. All right. So congratulations, NRG. That's a big one.
Next is the Money Used Super Carelessly Award, or the M.U.S.K award for short.
So this one goes to the team that spent the most money to make something worse. Congratulations, FlyQuest! Woo! So just like the name of the award, Elon's ruining Twitter one day at a time, and FlyQuest,
Papa Smithy?
managed
guess.
to really crack open the wall at this split.
And this one is crazy because you looked at this FlyQuest roster at the beginning of the year, and you're like, yeah, cool, looks good. And they got Vulcan, great, upgrade, and coming into summer.
They got Obli, they got LS, they're getting all kinds of influencers, and they were making it rain.
Yeah, renamed it to FlyX.
9th place.
Flex.
X-Quest.
X-Quest. It's kind of like SpaceX at that point. X-Quest. Yeah. I like it.
Finally, the most prestigious award, the Pro Most Deserving of an Award.
This is voted on by the pros themselves.
Yep.
We don't give them any context. They have no idea what they're actually voting on because they're not sure what the award is. And this time,
What do you mean? We tell them the title of the award.
The person who deserves an award
Yeah.
the most.
if this was a tooltip that you hovered over for more information, we don't give it though.
Yeah.
You get the title
There's
and
no
then
clarification
no
there.
tooltip.
What more do you need?
Yeah, empty Wikipedia page.
I get it.
So here we go. The winner with over almost 50% of the vote, which is a pretty big portion.
Yeah.
This time around, Jensen wins the pro most deserving of an award.
Yeah, very impressive stuff. We had people voting from a number of different teams. Actually, no one for Dignitas besides Jensen voted on this award. So it wasn't like his teammates were all voting for him. But Jensen got the most votes and does win. I think, still getting that respect from some of the other pros. Feel like he deserves some recognition for some of his
Are we
plays.
sure that's why I got it?
No, not at all. But we can kind of just insert our opinions in. And because they don't even really know why they voted for him either.
Maybe in their minds, it's like guy who fell off the cliff the hardest,
maybe it's
I
like,
don't know what.
Award for worst player.
maybe it's like, oh, I feel so bad for him. Here you go. Here's an award. You
It's a
really
pity
deserve
award,
this. Maybe I
yeah.
should try and cheer him up.
Maybe it's not a good thing. You don't know that.
Over
Could be
there.
like what are they? The Razzies or whatever?
Yeah,
The
the bad-
worst movie awards
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, it could be that.
Yeah, voted him for worst laner or something.
Yeah.
Who knows what this award is?
Or it's really the real MVP of the league.
It could be.
Hard to say.
We're
It
not
is
sure.
Hard
It
to
is
say.
really
Let
hard.
us know in the comments what you think this award is.
But Jensen won it.
You got it.
Either way.
Also, tell us who your vote would be
Yeah.
if you were a pro player.
So congratulations, or we're sorry to everyone who won the Divey this year. We're really happy. This is the third SPLITUAL Diveys.
Great show, boys.
If you have suggestions for what we should do for the next one, for next year, definitely hit us up. Let us know. I'm glad some of the pros got involved as well. So shout out to all the pros who showed up, clearly passionate about the awards themselves. Great admirers of ours. Love the show. They watch it every week. They've never missed an episode. So big shout out to them.
Surely.
And that'll wrap it up for us for now. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. Kobe, you should do that so you know when to show up for The Dive when that comes out.
Yeah, when you were like, oh, they really cared about the diveys. They showed up. I was like, I showed up technically in time for the.
You were here for the dive.
He doesn't
The
care about the
Diveys part.
dive, but he
Doesn't
cares
care
about the
dive.
diveys.
Yeah. He will not miss the diveys no matter what.
Exactly.
Even if there's no alarm clock set, his body's just like, it's diveys time.
I gotta go now.
It's like the meme, it's like the dive, I
Yeah,
sleep. Diveys, wide awake.
Real shit. Yeah.
All right. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor.fm. Make sure to send us questions on Twitter. Hashtag the dive LOL. I can't tell you how many dive questions I get that don't use the hashtag, and then we don't find them when we're looking for
We
questions
forget
later
about
because it's
that
hard to
more.
look back. LCS Summer Playoffs doesn't kick off this Thursday, but it continues this Thursday, August the 10th, with EG facing Team Liquid at 2 p.m. PT, 5 p.m. EST. Tune in. That series is going to be a lot of fun.